Hello everyone, my name's Cliff and welcome back to my channel. This is Cliff's Dark Gems. And if you're new here, well, take a seat, sit back, relax and enjoy the show. For tonight I'm going to do a book review of The Fisherman by John Langan. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, so tonight I'm going to try and do a review that is kind of spoiler free. And a lot of the time that when I do these things, I do books together. I've decided to do something different here. I decided to do single book reviews this month of books that stood out for me. And I know that a lot of my friends on booktube really love this book, so it'll be interesting what they think about my review. And I'm only going to give a rating at the end. Now, yeah, this is pretty much a wonderfully weird Lovecraftian tale where the focus is on grief and loss and how to deal with grief and loss. And it's story within a story, which is not always done that well. Does he do it well in this book? Let's wait and see and find out. Okay, so this book I'm going to talk about in 3 parts. And the first part will be very intimate. And we kind of introduced to this character called Abe. Now he's a protagonist, and we hear the story from his perspective. And he suffered a terrible tragedy. He has lost his wife to cancer, newlywed, and it was devastating because it took a long time. And yeah, his world's fallen apart. He's depressed. He turns to drinking, heavy drinking. And then he decides that he's going to take up fishing. And he goes, and first time he just sits there, but he carries on and he starts fishing. And I've got an idea about this. So when you lose someone you love, your world falls apart. It really does. I've experienced it. Maybe not a wife and child kind of thing, but I've experienced it. That your inner life is chaos. You become untethered, you kind of fall apart, and this is what happens to him. You might put a calm face out to the world, but inside you're crying, you're desperate. And I think the kind of fishing grounds him. It kind of places him in the here and now, and even the act of casting and in the water and being in nature, it kind of just centers him. And he continues to fish. And then there's another protagonist, Dan. It's Dan, I think, yeah. And basically he's now a co-worker, and this is sometime later, and he loses his whole family in a terrible accident. And yeah, he's absolutely devastated. And he becomes Abe's fishing buddy. And they go out. And there's this focus on their friendship in the first section. It's kind of a male friendship, companionable, silent friendship when they're fishing. Just side by side, casting in the water. And I think the whole thing is just done so beautifully. Focus on their grief and how the fishing just kind of helps them, sort of puts some kind of ointment on the wounds. Does it do it in the long run? We'll see. But it is a healing process for them. And then Dan finds out about this place. And it's up in the Catskills, in kind of New York. I don't know the area, but it's called Dutchman's Creek. It's mysterious, kind of infamous. And they head up there to go and fish. And to go to see what's up there in Dutchman's Creek. Okay, now we're coming up to part 2. Because before they go fishing, before they find the exact place, they stop for a bite to eat at this place, random place. The owner's name is Howard. Might just such a subtle thing, nod to H.P. Lovecraft. But anyway, they stop for a bite to eat. And when the owner knows the rest of the place is empty, when he knows where they're going, he tries to talk them out of it. And he tells them a story, a kind of very long, very weird, very crazy story. And yeah, so for part 2, you basically got these two characters sitting in this eatery with Howard telling them this tale of why they should not go to Dutchman's Creek. And yeah, the story takes us back like a century, or just many generations ago, like way back in history of the particular area before it's been developed and built up in the reservoir. And I'm not going to go into spoilers. I'm going to say it's an entirely new cast of characters, it's a new story, and yeah, there's this settlement, and I'm not going to say anything more except for that the transition between first part of the story, second part of the story, could be kind of jarring, but I found it was very well dealt with, and you very quickly get engrossed into these new characters because he writes really beautifully. His characters are very well realized, and yeah, his language is stunning. And even though you get a very distinct feel that the style has changed slightly, I still really enjoyed hearing about these characters and hearing about the story. And it does get Lovecraftian without going into spoilers. There's all sorts of wonderful things that take place. And this part of the story is about 150 pages long. We're going to get to that just now. But it's layered and it's beautiful and it's rich. And yeah, now we're going to come just to my first problem. And it's, if you go on Goodreads, a lot of people have a problem with this. And for me, maybe not as much as others, because I still think the entire story is wonderful. But it is very long, and it takes you a long time before you get back to part 1. And there are a couple of moments where I thought, after awesome Lovecraftian, like kind of epic moments, at where you think, okay, now's a good time to go back to these protagonists that we were introduced to, that I was so engaged in the story with these two. I want to know what happens when they go fishing. This is the perfect time to go back. But no, it goes on layer after layer after layer. Now, it's not that these layers were unreadable. I actually enjoyed the whole thing. It's just that I kept thinking, when I got to part 3, when you go back to Abe and Dan, you kind of forgot all about part 1 and how much I forgot how much I was engaged in. It was like having to kind of relearn these characters. I kept thinking about them. And now suddenly you're back in the present, and yeah, I still really enjoyed it though. It was fascinating, and I don't want to go into spoilers, and it is beautiful and it's worth a read. But I did think it stretched a little bit too long. Part 2. Okay, part 3. Yeah, we're back with Abe and Dan, and they head off to Dutchman's Creek to do some fishing. Do they catch a fish? Well, I'm not going to tell you. And I'm not going to tell you what happens next, except for it's freaking brilliant. I loved the end of the story, from that moment onward to the end, then afterwards an end. I don't say anything more, but it was beautifully told. And I have to say that overall, besides the fact that it dragged a little bit in the middle for me, and I think just felt that they could have gone back to the main story a little bit earlier. Because you consider the actual story within the story was actually longer. It was 150 pages. It was longer than the main story. And all that engagement you have at the beginning, kind of come out of it and you think, yeah. I gave it 4 stars. At some point I was thinking about 3 stars, 3.5 stars. But I think it's a very solid 4 stars. And it's a wonderful read. The language is beautiful. It's haunting at times. The descriptions are so vivid, and it's just such a sense of place and atmosphere that you're there. Really beautiful and very worth it. For a horror reader, I strongly recommend you read this book. But yeah, I can see why so many people, and I checked on Goodreads, so many people are turned off by the story within a story, because they found it jarring and they found it stretched and just too long. And I did a bit too, but the writing saved it for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Okay everyone, so have you read this book? What are your experiences with this book? I know that some of my friends right now are saying, oh, this was the best book I've ever read. But I've got to be honest, and that's what I am with all my reviews. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the spaces below. Tell me how much you enjoyed the story. And yeah, it's still highly recommended. But yeah, until next time, keep those pages turning. Take care of yourselves, and cheers.